Many thanks for the invitation to come to talk to you today at the beginning of the symposium of the Bluewater Action Research Network with the theme of sharing our knowledge. And I've been asked to address the issue of the Bluewater Action Research Network in an international context. And I'm looking forward later today of listening to and responding to the inquiries that you've been undertaking, all of which have got that form of a question about improving your practice. So all of your inquiries are focusing in my language of a living theory research of how do I improve what I'm doing, or how do we improve what we are doing. What I'm going to do is just to start with locating the work of the Bluewater Action Research Network, which I'll call BARN from now on, in the international context of the Action Research Network of the Americas, because members contributed to a large number of living posters, what I call living posters, which are where individual researchers put in a visual poster details of their values and what they're doing. And I'll just bring up the homepage of these living posters that were presented at the Action Research Network of the Americas on the 8th of May in 2015. And as part of this homepage, you'll be able to access this particular living poster from BARN. And as part of the poster, there are live URLs that take you into the work and the research and ideas and values of individual members of BARN. So I just want to emphasise that by producing these accounts and making them public and showing through a living poster that you're contributing to this large-scale gathering internationally of these living posters, you can place your work in an international context. I just want to focus on the international recognition of the work of BARN through the award to Cathy Griffin at the meeting in May 2015, where she is awarded the Promising Researcher Award from ANA. And I've included, though, the details of that in my notes, which you can access in the What's New section of actionresearch.net. And that is my web page where I place a lot of resources from researchers all over the world that are creating their own living theories as explanations of their educational influence in their own learning, in the learning of others, and in the learning of the social formations that influence our practice and understandings. So this is how I've located the work of BARN in an international context. And last year, when Jackie DeLong and myself were coming over to respond to the accounts of BARN members, the teachers' unions announced an action which actually called a halt to professional development activities. So although we were in Bluewater, we couldn't actually hold the meetings that we intended to do to respond to your accounts. And what's a pleasure, 12 months later, is that we're now back and sustaining our own motivations and our interests in your work. And I just want to emphasise, and I've put some images in the notes for this session, that show Skype conversations that have been very valuable in sustaining our motivation and our continuing work together over the preceding 12 months. So I do hope you'll have a look at those notes to emphasise the importance of sustaining conversations together and continuing to pay an interest and valuing what we're doing in continuing to stimulate our own research and make these contributions to the international context. Now, whilst I'm going to be focusing for the rest of the day on your presentations, all of which are focused on your own sites, your own classrooms, looking at improvements in your own practice and your own learning, I want to introduce this idea of autoethnography for those who have yet to meet it. Because in creating your own living theory as an explanation of your influence, you can draw into your explanation insights from self-study research, from narrative research, action research, a whole range of different methodologies which you find some of the methods useful in helping your own inquiry to move forward as you generate your own living theory methodology in answering your question. Because no methodology already existing on the shelf can just be applied to your question, which is actually a very creative question and requires your original contribution to actually provide an answer. So what I'm going to contrast is a book that I've just reviewed called Academic Autoethnography, which is constituted by some 13 accounts by teacher researchers, largely from South Africa, as each one of them show what it means to understand some of the cultural influences on our practice and understandings. And the great strength of an autoethnography, and this is what it means that the individual researcher can actually come to a better understanding of the cultural influences on their practice and understanding. Now that's a strength. Now the weakness of these autoethnographies is that the people who are constituting them don't tend to focus on the explanation of their educational influence in either the culture or in relation to their own learning and the learning of others. And this is a great strength, I want to argue, of your presentations. So the second part of the notes I produced just highlight the difference between the way you've asked your questions, which all focus on your I questions and your we questions in improving your own practice. And I want to suggest that you might strengthen these accounts, drawing insights from autoethnography as you show the influence of your culture in what you're actually doing and understanding. And my reason for suggesting you do this is because a Canadian culture is actually recognised internationally as having values that really do carry hope for the flourishing of humanity, which I'm saying is one of the distinguishing features of what it means to be educational. And you, I think, should be rightfully proud of what the Canadian culture can offer the rest of the world in terms of these values. So the second part of these notes highlight the differences in the issues that an autoethnographer will tackle, which all focus on cultural influence, and each one of them is showing a different cultural influence in their practice and understanding, but with the weakness that they don't explain their own educational influence in their own learning and the learning of others, and the great strength of your inquiries which do that. And I think that they will benefit from strengthening them by acknowledging the influence of the culture in terms of your own practice and understandings. And that's the second part of the notes that I've prepared. And then the third part focuses on something that I'm hoping that you will develop over the next few years, and that you will also create your own living posters and actually send them to me to add to the collection that we now have in terms of placing your work in the international context. But to bring your knowledge of what I would call your knowledge as professional master educators and doctor educators, I think you will need recognition for that, either through professional accrediting agencies, and you've also got a teaching council in Ontario, which is actually very influential, and you've also got universities which can offer and accredit the knowledge that you bring into the universities in relation to your own embodied knowledge as educators. At the moment, most universities offering master's degrees assume that the curriculum shows the knowledge which is pre-existing, which is up to the master's student literally to demonstrate they've understood and regurgitate back to the organisation to demonstrate their knowledge. Now, what I'm suggesting is that you work at co-creating master's programmes which actually recognise the value of your embodied knowledge as accreditable in terms of master's degrees, but which also recognise you as master or doctor educators. And in the third part of my notes, I've given you 3 illustrations of how I think you might do this together in negotiating with universities such as either Brock University or Nipissing University or other universities, certainly either nationally or internationally, to accredit your embodied knowledge. And the three illustrations I give you, one was from 1999, where I came to Bishop's University to actually lead a master's programme over the summer for 2 weeks. And I've shown you the programme that was created, co-created, which enabled a living curriculum, the curriculum produced by the individual participants, to be related to the given curriculum that was actually part of the curriculum that the university accredited. And I put for you the work of a new teacher, which was really inspiring, because over 2 weeks she produced 5 drafts, starting with very rough outlines of her inquiry as a new teacher, and she was supported by 8 experienced teachers in the group. And over the 2 weeks she produced a master's unit. So the 6th draft became the final submission, which was awarded the master's units. And she's called Tina Jacqueline, and I've put access to both the final product and the 5 drafts to show you the work that went into this final draft, but was done very quickly. The second illustration is coming from conversations that I'm having at the University of Cambridge, where I'm a visiting professor, to actually produce a living theory for improving practice module as part of a master's degree. And you'll see that the template that I'm included in the notes allows you to just draft out suggestions that you can share with others and then build up to a point of submission to a university. And then the third illustration I've put in the appendix, which actually is rather similar to the support that Jackie DeLong and others have given to people like Kathy Griffiths and Liz Campbell in producing their master's degrees, where you look at a whole master's programme for bringing your embodied knowledge into the university for accreditation. And I've put the whole of this as an appendix so that you can see the kind of things that you could co-create together to enhance the international influence of Barn as you make your knowledge public, not only get it accredited by a university, but that knowledge can then be spread internationally to influence others. And I've also given the URL to Action Research Canada, which is a lovely website with lots of resources from Canadian teachers who've researched their own practice and generated their own living theories as they inquire, how do I improve what I'm doing? With a particular focus on improving the learning of the children, where the educator is looking at the educational influence in their own learning, and perhaps most importantly, but an area that is quite weak in many living theory theses, is to look at your influence in terms of the social formation. That is, how are you influencing the culture, as Jackie DeLong did in her doctorate, to actually contribute to and sustain a culture of inquiry. Now, I'll pause there, and I look forward now to your presentations, which, as I say, will focus superbly on your own practice as you try to improve it. And also, I'll be trying to respond in a way that I can then add to the conclusion to my notes as we perhaps look ahead to what it is that the next 12 months might hold for Barn. Okay, but thank you very much for this opportunity to come to explore some of the ideas that I think will help us all to work together to literally enhance our understandings of ideas that carry hope, as I say, for the flourishing of humanity. Yes, many thanks, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the day. Thank you.